All right, guys, we're just getting things started. So just give us a second to get things working. All right, we're all ready.
Just let me. I'll call you on the Discord.
I think we're streaming too as well. Alright, there we go. Okay. I think we're all streaming and everything like that, so Heidi, you are ready to go.
I'm just gonna wait for you two to set up. How do you have 969 Discord notifications?
The other thing I was going to check is if we need to reserve a table. It's going to be in the hospital. Yeah, but as someone who works in hospitality, I know there is nothing to we can. We can. Just because I'm taking most takes.
Pardon? Yeah, that's good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hey, it's really, really cool. Are you free afterwards today? Like how free? It seems like you're going to just walk across the stuff. So we have table availability when you want to see where it is. Wait, where? Lost us. Ball game.
Oh, well, I was gonna say I might get some lunch anyway, so yeah. Would you guys want for lunch?
We went. There is genuinely not a much. If I find it by some miracle, I will let you know. The probability is.
Also, because I'm not paying attention, I'm sorry. As far as I know, also doing like, I don't know, like in the middle of doing this thing.
Yeah, it's fine. All right. Hey guys, welcome back to the second day of the workshop. Today we're going to be basically doing stuff just entirely in Unity. No PowerPoints or anything this time. So the first thing is that we're adding a couple more files to the template project. I dropped a Google Drive folder link for a zip file into the session chat in the CDW Sketch Club Discord, and so that one's just called dialogue, and you can see I have it downloaded up the top here. So first thing is to just extract that one. And if you look at your Unity hub, you can see the project we were working on here, and you can see that it has the file path for where this project is located. So if I went to show an Explorer, as you can see, it just opens up the downloads folder again because that's where we have it. So Unity projects are folders, and if I look in there, you can see it has all the different folders and stuff, and the most important one is the assets folder. Within your Unity project, you have the asset sort of viewer, then there's a word for it that I've forgotten. And this one, all the files in the assets folder here, they show up in your Unity project as files you can use in the folder. So last time we used some of these sprites here, and you can see the PNG file for them in the folder itself. And you can see it has this meta file here. And that basically tells Unity how it should treat the associated file, like what sort of we've done with it. So for example, this meta file would probably contain some information on the different, how the sprite sheet is sort of sliced up. Because last time we took this sprite sheet with these trees and these plants, and we made it into 5 separate sprites. And so that data would be contained in the meta file. So what we want to do is just take the new folder we downloaded, and I hope this will work. I haven't tested it, but there's no reason it shouldn't, and just grab the extracted folder and just throw it into your assets folder. And I am going to double check that this works by just opening up my project. And just in general, you can do a lot of this file stuff while Unity is open. So you can drag and drop new files directly into Unity's own folder view, or you can drag them into the file stuff here. And you can see we added the dialog folder, and now dialog.meta, Unity, as I'm opening the project, has generated its own .meta file for this new folder. So let me double check that everything sort of imported correctly. Yes, very nice. It looks like it did. Awesome. So just while people do that, I'm just going to give a refresher of where we were last week. We have our Tic Tac jumping around in the world, and we wrote a little shader for wind on sprites. And you can see how this tree is sort of blowing around in the wind. That's using our shader. So this is the sort of style that I go with for my games, mostly because I'm not great at 3D modeling. And one really big sort of benefit of using this sprite style is basically... Sorry, I just read the chat messages. Thanks, Alec. Very cool. Yeah, he's in the chat. Sam says hi. So one big benefit of using this sprite style is that in general, it's a lot more efficient because there's a lot less complicated meshes. You can see if I hit pause and I just hide the terrain real quick. If I put this into wireframe mode, you can see all the different vertices and triangles used in the Tic Tac mesh we've got here, capsule. This is called a capsule in Unity. And as opposed to that, you can see the really simple mesh of the sprites. Now, obviously, there's different reasons for why this you know, style would or wouldn't work. It doesn't work for every game, but just in general, if it is the sort of style you want to go with for a game, it is pretty useful for that reason. And one thing I didn't really touch on last time is while you are in playing mode in the inspector, you can see the game is running in the Unity editor. If you make any changes, for example, if I took this tree and I moved it to the right side of the world instead and put it over there, you can see that the change happens in the game, but then when I go back, when I exit out of playing mode, the tree is back to its original position. Whereas if I move the tree while it's not playing, and I move it over here, and then I hit play, you can see the tree is there, and I exit out of playing mode, and the tree is still in that position. So basically, you want to, any changes that you want to keep, you want to have them saved out of playing mode. And I do believe there is like some settings or something that you could do to change this. I just don't know what they are. I think some of the designers have used them before. But yeah, are we all good on the dialogue folder stuff? Okay, one sec, let me check that out.
It's not your fault.
Okay, well, if that does happen, all we did last time was the wind shader, so you could just get the template version together. Yeah, don't worry. Whoops. Anyways, so going into the dialogue folder, you can see there's two scripts in here, and there's a folder with a bunch of sprites. We're actually going to do a bunch of moving around on these different files. Basically, how you would usually import something like this would be through a package or something, but we're not gonna cover that. I couldn't be bothered setting it up. So you want to take the two things called Dialog Manager and Has Dialog, and you can see your little sort of file view on the side here. You can see we have the assets folder and all the different folders, and you can open them and close them. And what we want to do is we want to drag them down here to the scripts folder. And you can see they've been moved. And it might take a moment to recompile, sort of just load after you do that. Basically, this sort of really like solid file structure and organization, you might not think it's that important at first, and as you sort of build on your game and develop it more, you'll realize like just how important this sort of stuff is. If you're going for a really long project that's going to take a lot of time, you really want to have just a really strong file structure, because it saves so much time looking for files, and just having them all in the right place and named the right thing is very important. A lot of AIE students actually, in our final projects, we get to points where we're naming new like meshes or 3D objects that we import, character mesh, final, use this one, finalized version, that sort of stuff. And it gets a bit hellish. I had a problem last year in one of those assignments where for 3 hours we were trying to figure out why the animation on a character wasn't working, and the problem was that it wasn't using the right mesh, and we just hadn't noticed because of how we had named everything. So that was a bit of a problem, but it's all fine now. So yeah, in the other thing we want to do with the dialog folder is we want to take these 3 sprites, which is the box, the one just called E, and the one called Hat Guy. He'll be relevant soon. And we just want to drag them into the sprites folder on the side here. Now you can see that Hat Guy and E, they are already using the correct settings on the side here, whereas box is still a default texture. And we're going to go through that in a sec, why all of that sort of stuff is. But for now, go back to assets and rename the dialog folder to resources. Now the resources folder, this is getting into a bit of programming stuff. It's an interesting folder in Unity because basically what it allows you to do is take files within this folder. Like you can see we have the sprites here. Oh, also, sorry, one sec. If you go into this folder, we want to drag Hatman and Player so that they're just in resources, like that. I'll come around in a sec to make sure that's all how it should be because that was a bit confusing. But yeah, the resources folder, it basically lets you reference files from it through code at runtime. And so if I wanted to pull like one of these player sprites out of this folder through code, I can. And the thing about that is that everything that's in the resources folder gets loaded into the project in every level, every time at runtime. I think it's stored in data or memory, one of the two. And so you have to sort of use it sparingly. You don't want to have like a million things in this folder because it will really increase your loading times when you like load a new level. And you really don't want that. And so what I usually use this for is for dialogue sprites, but there's definitely better ways that you could do this. If you had like a really big game with lots of dialogue, like lots of sprites, lots of characters, lots of sprite for each character, you would want to have a really better system of loading those sprites in as opposed to using resources. And yeah, so we're going to go back to the sprites folder now and click on the one that says box. And we're going to do the regular changing this into a sprite. So we're going to set the texture type to sprite, 2D and UI, and the filter mode to point, no filter, and hit apply. These ones, unlike the tree sprites, these ones are just singular sprites, so they stay as single. And I'm not going to change the pixels per unit on these ones because they are actually, these are going to be used for UI, so they don't need to be changed at all. And we'll talk more about that in a second. And I'm just going to come around and check that that has happened. Huh?
I'm just stupid at I feel like I have. Yeah, no. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab box. Are you sure you don't want to just use the like default project? Oh, I'm gonna project out function. Okay, right. Awesome. Nice. Right. So box, change it to Sprite. And yeah, single, and everything else is like the correct settings. Right. So scroll down and hit apply. If it works, right? Add more things to it. Okay, I was going to say like my product. Wait, I want. Do you know how that is? I just. That is how I'll eventually figure out how to.
It is. How about that? Yeah, Emma, welcome to my Roblox stream. Yeah, this is recorded. I sent this to like one of my Discord chats and they were like, "Oh, nice professionalism." Anyways, so what we're gonna do is first of all, click on the box, and because we installed the 2D Sprite package last time, we can hit the Sprite Editor. And what we want to do with this sprite is turn this into a I think it's called a 9-patch sprite, and what it lets us do is just tile the sprite repetitively instead of stretching it. So what I'm going to do is, you see there's 2 boxes around the sprite here. There's a blue one and then there's these green points. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the top one down 3 pixels, the left one across 3 pixels, the bottom one up 3 pixels, and the right one to the left 3 pixels. And you can also use the values down here to set the borders. And as you can see, all of them are at 3 pixels. What a 9-patch basically does is it preserves each of its corners, the corner boxes here, and doesn't change the aspect of them. It stretches the one in the section in the middle here. I think you choose between stretching or tiling the middle one. And the ones up the top here also get stretched, but only along one axis. So just to show you what this does, when I hit exit, hit apply, and then if I wanted to make a new object that was a box, you can see if I just dragged it regularly, it would stretch the sides here, and that's not what we want. You don't have to do this, by the way, this is just demonstrating. Whereas if I set it to sliced, and you can see now when I'm dragging it, it preserves the size of all the pixels, which is what we want. Looks a lot nicer. And yeah, thumbs up when we're done. We're going to do that again. That was helpful. Awesome. So now we are going to set up a UI for our game. Huh? Oh, did you get it work? Oh, nice. It's working. Oh, dude, wait, let me see that. Let me see. Yes.
And I went into the Sprite thing and I did that.
Oh, dude, that looks so cool.
I had this problem where I accidentally got rid of the C. Give me a second to add that back. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Borrow a mouse. Do you want to borrow my mouse? Borrow my mouse. There's a gravestone.
Oh, that is so cool.
I don't know anything else.
I love the gravestone.
I made. Wait. How do I find the tree Sprite? Because I put them. Yeah. There's a mushroom in there.
Oh,
no. Anyway, go back to teaching your part.
I'm gonna grab my mouse for you first.
So I went to the grass right the studio.
Do you want me to real quick get you up to this point?
No,
It will take like 2 seconds.
fine. I haven't even put the extract the dialogue folder.
Yeah, that's it. It won't take.
Do you
long.
want to wait till 1? Wait till 1.
You sure? Because we're about to do some more like setting up stuff.
I'm so sorry. Emma and Alec, the only other 2 people watching. I apologize.
I'll be fine. I'll live.
Don't open my Discord.
Can you open up CBW server on Discord?
Yeah, ignore my DMs with this is my friend from Portugal. I don't talk to anything like that.
Yeah, the laptop.
Don't like stream my thing. Back. I have the dialogue from demo.
Oh, okay.
I just haven't extracted.
Yeah.
No, because they made us download the which is amazing.
Yeah. So
take a moment. Chill. Chill. Where is the bloody taskbar? Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we're back. So up in your hierarchy, which refresher is the list of objects in the scene on the left side, right click, go to create UI, and we want to add a canvas. So UI is the user interface of your game, which is basically anything on the screen. It's like buttons and stuff that the player clicks on. And what we are going to be using it for is to create a little dialogue system where you can walk up to an object in the game and talk to it. So right click and add a canvas. Oh, I did the thing with the box, it's fine. Yeah. And when you add the canvas to your game, if you double click on it in the hierarchy, it'll zoom out so you can see the whole thing. One thing I sometimes do, especially when working on my own game, which has a really bright sky, is I hit the button up the top here, which will turn off the skybox, and you can see that that does make it a bit easier to see. It's this little button that has a couple of layers and a sparkly icon. Yeah, thumbs up when we're here. All right, so on the canvas, right click and click Create Empty. And just rename this object. You can rename an object in the inspector on the right side and just call it dialogue. One thing about UI objects is that you do need to have a new one for every type. So if you right click on the canvas and create an empty game object and name it dialogue. So with the UI objects, you need to have a new one for every object, basically. So if I wanted to add an image to this to a UI object, I would need to have a new object for each image. So I'm gonna add 4 more objects to the UI. Empty ones. And as you can see, they're childs of the dialogue object. And I'm gonna rename them box, sprite, name, and text. I mean, you can if you want to. Nothing's stopping you. Another thing about the UI is that generally it's, while you can override this, it's ordered the same way as the hierarchy. So box will be on the bottom here, sprite will overlap that, name will overlap that, and text will overlap that. You need to somewhat keep that in mind when you're creating your UI, but sometimes, as I said, you can override it. In general, it's easiest to use the hierarchy, but sometimes you have to. What I'm going to do is click on box and click add component, and we want to add an image component to this one. And as you can see, that adds the image here. There's no source sprite at the moment. So we want to take from the sprites folder our box and drag it in here. Oh, you need the other sprites folder. That's probably resources, sprites, So as you can see, the image has actually done this automatically where it changed it to a slice type to use the perfect pixel ratio. If you want to make the pixels smaller or larger, you change the pixel per unit multiplier. And I am going to zoom out to see what type. We're going to go at about... We'll do about 0.2 for the pixels per unit multiplier on the side here. And that gives it sort of a nice pixel size. So you can see up in the top here, UI elements use what's called a Rect Transform, which is basically controls the size and the position and the rotation of the UI element. Up in the top left corner here is what's called the toolbar, and we're usually on the move tool by default. But what we want to do is we want to change it to the Rect tool, and this one will let us basically drag the scale of the UI element here and drag it to where we want it to be. So I can switch between these two tools to drag it out to the side like that and drag it to the bottom of the screen. And what I might want to do is set the X position to 0 so that it is in the very middle of the screen here. Now I can see how that looks in the UI canvas in the world, but I don't really know how it looks on the screen. If I change over to the game tab here, you can see exactly how much of the screen this is going to take up when I run my game. You can also change the aspect ratio of the game to something more exact. I'm just going to put mine at 16:9 and then change the box position accordingly. Generally, it sets the aspect ratio to free aspect by default, and we don't really want that because that will resize with the Unity editor. Some people might want that, but for now it's easier to have a set aspect ratio because then it won't resize the UI or move the positions of it around every time we change the aspect ratio. Anyways, I'm gonna come around real quick and see where people are at. You're dragging dialogue instead of box. Oh, I thought I did. If you click on the box, Sprite Editor, and change it to pixels. Yeah, just hit start.
And was there anything? Oh, don't really have me. I'm not going to. And then. On like these, if we get up to it, it would definitely take those. Well, we can do that, but I'll move up to the video. Yeah, yes. I understand.
So the next thing we want to do is we want to go back to our scene so we can see the canvas as a whole and click on the next object, which is the sprite. We want to add another image to this one. And what I'm going to do is grab an image from the resources folder this time. We're going to grab an image of the Hat Man. And it's going to be his happy sprite. Let me grab this. There we go. And I'm going to drag it down to the left side of the box here. And I might want to change the width and height to 150 each. And just drag it into place. And I'm going to adjust the pixel scale of this to match. Close enough. So if you looked over here again, you can see that we have the sprite on the side here, and we have the box behind it. And as I said before, if the things were ordered differently, so sprite was underneath the box in the hierarchy, it would disappear, but we have it above there. One thing we could do is make sprite a child object of the box object, so its position is now relative to the box, and then I could change the Y position and to 0 so that it's perfectly centered on the box. I can adjust these a little bit. And thumbs up when we're done. Okay, cool. On name, we're going to add a different component. This is a text component. And I'm just going to type, you can see in the text component, it has the text that's actually displayed, and I'm just going to write name, and I'm going to change the color to black. And you can see all the different properties of the text here. They're all pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to make it a bit bigger and give it a size of, we'll say 30, and give it a height of 40. And we're going to drag this just next to the sprite. And I might set that one to bold. So Unity just comes with a default font, Arial by default. Great sentence. And you can import your own fonts. You can download ones online to get custom fonts in here, but for now we're just going to go with the default font. Something like this would look good with the sort of pixelated style font. And generally, as you get more used to Unity, there's a different way of adding text to the screen, which is called Text Mesh Pro. It's its own package. We're not going to cover that one today, but it generally renders things a little bit better. You can see the name is a little blurry here, and it's a lot cleaner using Text Mesh Pro. If some of the words get cut off, that's because the text box, the width is too small. Yeah. One thing you can do is set the horizontal overflow to be overflow instead of wrap, and then that'll just display it no matter what. Here, this part here. Hatman does look nice. I agree, Alec. Yeah, thumbs up when we're done again. And for the last object in the dialog, we're going to add another text component. And this one, I'm just going to put a bunch of A's in the text at first. I'm going to change the font color to black again, and this will be the text that he is saying. So we want the text box here to take up a decent chunk of space across the screen. I'm going to set the text size to about 22 and put it just under the name. It's a little difficult to see the bounds of where the text is. You can see the 4 blue circles in the corner here representing each corner. If I hid the box, you can see the text lines a bit clearer. And on this one, we do want the horizontal overflow to be set to wrap. We don't want that one to overflow. We can set the vertical overflow to overflow if we want. It doesn't really matter. Generally, you don't want a dialog line to be so long that it runs off the screen. Yeah. I don't think I will. Anyways, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the player object. That's your tic tac. If you double click it, you'll focus again on it in the inspector. And up the top here, you can see there's a little thing that says tag. We're going to change the tag from untagged to player. And after that, we're going to add in a new game object, create empty, and I'm going to name this game manager. I'm going to set its position to 0, 0, 0, and I'm going to drag it up here to the top of the hierarchy. And it has a game controller tag. We'll give it game controller. It's not important though. The game manager in the game is usually, or it depends from game to game. If you had a really small game, your game manager would control all of the game flow. So for example, in Snake, the game manager might have the functionality for when the game is started and when it's ended and that sort of stuff. And it would say, once you reach this point, go on to this thing next. In our case, in Unity, I use a game manager object basically just for putting on a bunch of different manager scripts that relate to different things within the game. And yeah, thumbs up when we're done on that. Now we're going to add a new script onto the game manager, and this one is the dialogue manager. So this is one of the scripts added from the folder today, and you can see that it has a bunch of what's called references that are all empty. They're all set to nothing, and it also has a float value called delay, which is set to 0.05. Now, what we want to do with these references is we want to tell the dialogue manager which game object corresponds to each of these variables. So for the sprite, we want to go back to our canvas, grab the object called sprite, and just drag it into the box. We want to do the same for name box, grab the name object, text box, grab the text object, and for dialogue object, we want the object as a child of our canvas, that just says dialogue. And we're going to grab that one and drag it in. So we want a dialogue object is the one called dialogue under canvas here. Yep, all good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little object that you can talk to within the game. So right click, and I'm going to actually add a sprite this time. And what I want to do is go into sprites. I'll right click, go to 2D object and add a sprite. Oh. Oh no. I don't want to. Join. Anyways, yeah, right click 2D object and add a sprite. Oh, right, different stuff. Let me see this.
I think you have 2021.1.10.
And yeah, so on the sprite object, you can see we now have a sprite renderer, and I'm gonna grab this sprite from the assets view in the sprites folder called hat guy, and I'm just gonna grab him and drag him onto the sprite renderer. He's very handsome. So hat guy, so in assets, go to sprites. And if you click on the new sprite object that you made, grab hat guy and drag him into the sprite of the sprite renderer component. He's there, yeah. And in the material in the sprite renderer component, I'm also going to change it to sprite_default, just so he has some lighting on him. You can put the wind on him if you want. He can be a bit wiggly, you know. You know, he's doing a little dance. He's wiggling, yeah. To be fair, if you do put a ghost in your game, like, the wind material would look really good on that. Yeah, we are actually going to cover adding animations with these sort of sprites to the player in a bit. We can do that. Now, one thing about Hat Guy here, I'm going to change his name to Hat Guy, just the name of that game object. You can see that the little pointer on him, his location in the world, is in the middle of his face. And I actually want it to be at his feet. So I'm going to click on his sprite. This isn't like, you don't need to do this if you don't want to, by the way. And I'm just going to change his pivot to the bottom instead. So I click on hat guy, his sprite, and then change the pivot to bottom and hit apply. And you can see it moves him up a bit. And now if I click on him again and I change his Y position to 0, you can see now that he is at the 0 position on the Y axis and his feet line up very nicely with the... Well, you can move like, you can... Yeah, it'll be fine, it'll be fine.
Hello.
Hey Duncan, is there someone else?
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Is this?
Hey.
Is this?
Yeah, we're streaming right
Oh,
now.
is this a workshop? Oh,
Yeah, this is the workshop.
Oh, okay. I'll move my.
Duncan, I'll talk to you later about like your workshop. This is Cass, by the way.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Hey,
I'm
guys.
also
Oh, no,
Cassie.
I thought you guys were just drawing stuff, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll come in. Okay. Let's start.
We should do that though, but yeah. Nah, this is workshop.
All right, back to hat guy.
Anyway.
Yeah. So now what we want to do is when you are actually, first of all, I'm going to put hat guy in my world over here. Now, if you look in the game view, if I hit play right now, I would have hat guy screaming in the dialogue box all the time, and we don't want that. So what we're actually going to do is open the canvas up, click on the dialogue object, and if you go up to the inspector again, you see next to the name, there's a little tick. And we're going to uncheck that, and that hides it until we need it in the game. So if it's checked, this is setting the game object to active, which means that it'll draw in the game and all of its components will run their code, but we don't want that. We want it to be inactive at the start of the game. Now, if we go back to hat guy, we want him to have some dialogue. So we're going to add the next script to actually, is everyone following? Thumbs up? Yeah, so we're going to add the has dialogue component to him. And as you can see, there's a little thing called lines here, and if we click that, it tells us that currently hat guy has 0 lines of dialogue. Now what we want to do is we want to maybe let's give him 3 lines of dialogue, and you can see that named element 0, 1, and 2, and I can open all of them up and close all of them. And you can see each line has a name, an expression, and text. Now, we're going to revisit our resources folder. You can see in the resources folder, there's a folder called Hatman. We want to rename... Yes, here's a blushing sprite. We want to rename Hatman to whatever you're going to refer to as hat guy as. Alec. If you're still in the chat, tell me what to name hat guy. I'm not naming him Sans. Willem Dafoe? He doesn't look like Willem Dafoe. Charlie Chaplin. I love these suggestions, guys. One thing is, in the resources folder, I could have programmed this in a way that it would account for spaces. I have not done that, so Hatman's name is not going to have any spaces. The Hatman folder. So right-click on the folder and hit rename. The Undertaker? Yeah, okay, nice. I'm gonna give him, just a name out of nowhere, just a name I've never used before. I'm gonna name him Danny, I don't want to.
I'm sorry.
I'll name him Daniil. You know, it's a middle ground. I'm professional. I'm professional. Okay. Now we're gonna click on Hat Guy again. And actually keep your resources folder open. So you can see that each line has a name and an expression. And you can see in the resources folder, we have 2 different folders within it. We have one, Daniil's folder. So glad we're here. And he has 4 different sprites. He has sprites. He has a blushing sprite, a happy sprite, a neutral sprite, and a sad sprite. And the player has the same set of sprites. Just without the hat. So objectively worse. What we want to do in the name and expression of each of these is make sure they correspond to the name of one of the folders and the name of one of the sprites. So maybe I will say Daniil has the first line and his expression is neutral. And obviously you guys will substitute Daniil for whatever you named your Hat Guy folder. And he will say, hello, nice to meet you. And then I'm going to follow up with a line from the player who is blushing. And they say, I like your hat, man. And then I'm going to follow up with another line from Daniil, who is still neutral. And he says, you'll never be me. So you can put, so long as the name and expression correspond to the names here and the expressions here, you can change these lines to anything you want. And you can also add new sprites by dragging them into these folders. You could add new characters this way. This is a benefit of this system. As I said, if you had a really big dialogue-focused game, you wouldn't use something like this. You would use something a bit more efficient. But this one is very flexible and sort of easy to understand in terms of you don't need to sort of have a really complicated structure to load the sprites in and out. You would probably use dictionaries or something if you were using them for a really big game. Good. Now we're going to add the last component to Daniil here. We want to search for a box collider. Well, no, this is, you could keep it there so you can't run through him, but this is actually so you can talk to him. So in the box collider component, you can see where it says is trigger, and we want to set that to true. I don't know why I paused for so long on that one. That's one checkbox. You can see here, first of all, to see the lines on this one, you do need to have gizmos enabled up here. So if that is somehow turned off, just make sure it's on. And you want to grab this spot where it says Edit Collider, click it once, and you can see that these draggable points have been added to the object. So we want to drag this out a little bit and just make a sort of box around him from where you can approach him. And once you've done all of that, we should be able to hit play up the top here. As you can see, if I walk up to Daniil, and the button to press to talk to him is currently set to E. So if I hit E, Daniil starts talking to me. And I can hit enter to proceed through the dialogue. Here, I'll come round.
Yeah, it was a hidden one. Yeah. So you click on the hashtag Sprite. Don't touch the screen. Oh, yeah, click on that, and then click on it in and pixel per unit. You want to make that bigger. Bigger? Yeah. Smaller. No, you want to make it. And then you scroll down and click Sprite. And press enter. What a man. What a guy. What a guy.
You get like a gorgeous little recording experience going on. No,
Lovely work, guys. I feel free to show your work in session. You never realized this.
Yeah, feel free to share your work in session chat. So yeah, if you wanted to add more lines of dialogue, you would add, shockingly enough, you would increase the number of lines of dialogue by saying, say, 5. And just as a reminder, I am editing this in play mode, so these changes won't save outside. So. What's the thing called don't destroy unload? I don't know, but you probably shouldn't destroy it. Yeah, I actually don't know what it is, Unity thing. So yeah, you can see I've added 2 more lines of dialogue, and once again, I added these while in play mode, so they're not going to save when I end play mode, and if I walk up to him and I hit E to talk to him, I now have more lines of dialogue, I hope. Yeah, I do. Huh? Yes, I coded this thing yesterday. I'm organized, I swear. I don't know, we can take him for a swim. We're gonna have our break here also. Let's see this. Yeah. Okay. Yep, that's break time. We'll be back in 15 minutes, we'll say. I'm gonna stay in the pond with Tennille. Oh shit. Come around real quick.
Oh, wow. 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 Yeah, it doesn't look as it's probably rotate that. So change the XLI value of that and you also change if you open up the general tab, mission. Yeah, you can also change the color of it. Holy shit. I want it to be gold. we're all like this bunch of like. You know, I'm watching.
I'll put him in the pond again.
Oh, you're gonna put the nail on the pond.
He's in the pond. Sam, watch this. Oh shit. He's swimming. Professionalism. The Neo in the pond, what crimes will he commit? And you can rename your player if you want.
You dropped the link for this in your AI stuff.
I did not.
I'm going to.
Okay. Mention that we're on a break at the moment.
Yeah.
No, I just had like a 15-minute silence in the middle of lesson while I tried to remember something.
What, 10 minutes? You're back in like 10?
Yeah. You guys have a vending machine that'll
Yeah.
accept a $50 note.
Oh, no, I have a 52, but I'm just going to give it get through now. So,
People tune into the stream and see that. No context. He is swimming. Let me make sure I put my box in my bag.
already did it.
No, I'm just making sure I have it.
So cool.
I'm sorry.
Say hi to the stream. Hello, stream. Hi, chat. Hi, chat. Please subscribe. You know you use your free Twitch stream. It's still recording. I forgot to mention you can be. How? Make it blood red. I'm sorry. Just a second. Hi, give me a second. What? So click on one of my planes here. You should look at my green. The water Bruh. Dude, that is cool. Except it might be right for a bunch of text and stuff on it. And I got this one thing. None of it came across. I'm not actually sure how that like translates. It also just it doesn't take like capital colors or anything. It's just like it's blue or it's nothing. You know, all that. Yeah, you see the upward. Wait, how do you do that? So you click on the water and click on the water material. Yeah. And on the circle, just the thing. And click on the pink circle at the bottom there. And then just change the color. Yeah. Deep water, shallow water, from color. Like, take that back. I think I'll leave it.
Set up some of my own stuff. That's not a pine tree.
Dude, mine is like atrocious.
That's Unity, son.
Don't start that. I only got that from
Okay.
one person. Oh my god, Alex, stop screaming in the chat. Are we going back to our break?
I'm just putting some trees around. The break ends in 6 minutes. Was.
Accounts that people hear and saying, what is that all like? I'm gonna go to it, but
They're my friends.
they're your friends.
No, they're not. I don't know these people.
Like, you just start making the rect.
But you have?
Yeah.
I don't know how to moderate.
No, just give it.
Let's try it. Put user in timeout, Alex. Hey, Heidi, can you ask Alex if he wants to be in timeout?
Alex, Sam wants to know if you want to be put in timeout. They're a moderator. Yeah, communication takes them like 10 hours to reply. Oh, I misspelled his name. I wrote the wrong things in the wrong slot.
That's all right. What?
Because it's a bit less deep. Less deep, bro. Bro, he's just like me for real. Well, in 3 minutes. Yeah, we still got 3 whole minutes. Yeah. Yeah. Huh? We're not doing waterfalls today. It's a different shader graph. It's 1:30. We are back. Over the break, I changed like 2 things. My guy Daniil over here, he is now in the pond and he has some new dialogue to reflect that. He is drowning. Anyways, what you might have noticed is when you walk up to Daniil, nothing really tells you that you can talk to him right now. Player feedback and that sort of stuff in general is a pretty big part of game development, and so what we're going to do is make a little button prompt appear above his head whenever you can talk to him. So we'll grab his hat guy object over on the side here and right click and make another sprite by going to 2D object and sprite. And that'll add another sprite object attached to his object. Now the way I've coded this is that Oh, hi Ty! Hello, welcome and to watching me put hat guy in a Unity game. Yeah. Anyways, so how I've coded this means that when... Oh, the headset's falling off. how I've coded this is that when you walk up to him, if there is a little prompt object attached to him, it will appear when you are near him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the E sprite and I'm going to drag it into the sprite renderer here. And you can see that it just goes where his position is, which is at his feet. And so I'm going to drag it up so that it's above his head. Sorry, do you guys want me to go over that one again? Okay, all good. Let me just double check the... And just for clarity's sake, I'm going to rename that to prompt. Now, it's up to you whether you want to keep the default sprite material or change to the shaded one. For this one, I'm actually just going to keep it on the default sprite material because this sort of stuff is kind of like a combination of UI within the environment itself, and you might want it to stick out a bit more by having it, you know, not be shaded like the rest of the world, so it's not affected by shadows and like. And so now, when I walk up to Daniil in his pond, it just works with the script. The script for has dialogue. So yeah, there's nothing else you need to change here. So you can see it tells me when I can press E to talk to him, and it goes away when I talk to him, and comes back. So obviously, if you guys wanted to have a different sort of UI, you could change the sprites that we use for that. You could just recolor the box sprite, or you could make an entirely new one and replace it on the canvas. So long as the references are still set correctly in the dialog manager object, that will stay consistent. And the speed at which the dialogue is typed out can also be changed through the manager. That's what the little delay parameter is for. So the max I've set it to is 0.2. And as you can see, he talks a little... Wait, no, that needs to be changed at start time. I was wrong. So as you can see, if I set it to 0.2, he talks very slowly. Yeah. Yeah, generally I have it at 0.05, 20 letters a second. It's a pretty nice speed. Once again, a more detailed dialogue system might have it so that different characters talk at different speeds. They might use different sound effects. This doesn't use any sound effects. That sort of stuff to give, you know, the system a bit more life. But right now, we just have it set delay, no sound effects, real basic stuff. Now what we're going to look at is called prefabs. A prefab in Unity is like it's basically like a template for an object. So in the assets folder, we're going to make a new folder and just name it prefabs. So obviously you right click and go to create folder. Yeah, no, it's all good. So obviously we don't want to go through that exact setup every time we want to make a new NPC. And to make a new one, right now, it's easy enough to just duplicate it and drag it somewhere else. But it can get a bit more difficult if you're going between scenes, if you have a lot of the same object. And one thing is that maybe I could make a new NPC, but then maybe I would want to add something to this guy. Maybe I got some feedback and people said they don't like using E to start talking to people when they want to press X instead. So to change that, I would change it in the script, and I would change this sprite that says E. But the problem with that is that then I would have to go to this guy as well and change his sprite too. And if I have hundreds of objects like this within the scene, I don't want to do that. So that's where prefabs come in. So we're going to set Hack Guy to some really basic settings. I'm going to set his position to 0, 0, 0, and I'm going to remove all of his lines within the dialogue, and I'm just going to center the box on him a little bit more. He is in the corner. Yeah, just set the dialogue lines to 0. So what I'm going to do with Hack Guy here is I'm going to go into the prefabs folder. I'm going to rename Hack Guy to NPC. Caps lock. Okay. I got there. I've renamed him to NPC. You can see we have a bunch of really basic variables for each of these, and I'm just going to drag his object into the prefabs folder. And as you can see, I now have a little object in the prefabs folder called NPC, so thumbs up when we're there. Okay, this isn't like mandatory. This is just a Unity thing, so you don't really need to follow along perfectly with this one. Okay, I'll explain it again. Before that, yes, I renamed Hack Guy to NPC. I set his position to 0, 0, 0. I gave him 0 lines of dialogue, and now he's a very basic guy. So I created a folder for prefabs. So thumbs up when we're here. We're here? Okay, and then open up the prefabs folder, grab the NPC game object, and just drag it into the folder. So now if I wanted to add a new Hack Guy somewhere in here, I would just drag him out like that. And you can see we have 2 of him. I'm going to put them next to each other. And I can give each of them their own individual lines of dialogue. Oh my god, I have caps lock on. For the dialogue to work, you just need to have a folder in resources with their name and with all their sprites in it. Yeah. No, so I can so see this guy has 1 line and he says he's a cool Hack Guy, and this one. Yes. So now, as you can see, we have the 2 of them. This guy says he's a cool Hack Guy, and this guy he's a bit controversial. He says he's the cooler hat guy. And what I might decide is that I don't like where the prompt is. Maybe I want it to be the left of his head instead. And I could do that and then right click up here. Actually, I'll slow down a bit for this one. Are we all here? Okay, so I might decide that I want the prompt to show up next to his head instead. So if you look at the position up here, you can see that's at 3.14 on the y-axis, and you can see that the position text is highlighted a little differently. It's regular font and it's regular style. And I don't know, Alec, I don't know what the bots are. They're just chilling. Yeah, there's more. Oh, they're our friends. They just love me. Huh? Yeah, they have the Hat Man, and honestly, who wouldn't be? That is, I don't swing that way, but that is a fine man right there. Don't worry about it. Anyways, I might decide that I want the prompt to be next to his head instead. So you can see up here, the position, where it says position is just its default text. And when I move it, you can see that it has this little blue line next to it, and the font's a bit bolder, and the X position, it was also using bolder text. So if I do that, you can see that it hasn't changed on our other hat guy yet. But if I right click where it says position and I say apply to prefab NPC, it also moves on him. So that's the main benefit of prefabs, is that if you're going to use this object a lot and you're maybe still making changes to it, that's what you want to use that for. Anyways, with that all out of the way, we are going to get started on turning our Tic Tac into a guy that looks a bit like Hat Guy here, you know, without the hat, so worse. This is going to be a bit more. We're going to be using Unity's Animator component, and so we're probably going to need to focus just a bit more on this one, because yeah, I'm telling you guys to listen. First of all, if you click on our Tic Tac for our player, we're going to remove the mesh renderer and we're going to remove the mesh filter. Yeah, right click and select remove component. Mesh renderer and mesh filter. And as you can see, he's invisible now. We want to go into our sprites folder, and you can see we have a sprite sheet here. So we want to change the settings on this one. We're going to set it to the texture type to sprite, 2D and UI. We're going to set the sprite mode to multiple, and we're going to set the filter mode to point no filter. And I'm going to change the pixels per unit to 10. Yes, rest in peace, Tic Tac. He was the last of his kind. And I'm going to hit apply on that one. We all here? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to open up the Sprite Editor now. This is a sort of sprite sheet. If you were making one of these sprite-based games, you would probably see a lot of in game development, and I use a lot of these myself. One of the big sort of pros to using sprite sheets that I covered a bit last time is just that, you know, it stores a little bit better, it's a little bit clearer in the inspector, and it's just easier than importing, you know, I have 20 sprites here. It's easier than importing them all individually. So we're going to slice these, and instead of what we did last time, which was slicing them automatically, which would make boxes around the sprites containing only their pixels, what we're going to do is we're going to change it to grid by cell size. And the pixel size is 25 by 30, and the pivot is at the bottom. Yeah, we're all good. And yeah, then we hit slice, and you can see it slices each of these into their own little box. We could rename these if we wanted to. I don't think it's necessary, but if you wanted to, you could say, you know, left idle. This one is right idle. Front idle. And back idle. Real simple. And when you hit exit, hit apply. Now when you look at your sprite sheet down the bottom here and you hit the little arrow on the right, you can see all of our little sprites down here. Yep, we all good? So what we're going to do is we're going to add two new components to the player character. The first we're familiar with. It's our sprite renderer. And what we want to do is use one of these idle sprites. I'm going to grab the left idle sprite and just throw it in there. I'm going to change his material to sprites underscore default. And you can see if I hit play now, he's floating a little. So what we want to, actually, I'll give you guys a moment. Just find the idle sprite then. One of them should be 5 sprites in from the side. Yes. So if I open up the character controller sprite, you can see the character controller component. You can see this is where the capsule currently is. And what we want to do is set the center to 1 on the y-axis, not 0.5. And you can see now the green sort of capsule here is surrounding him. And now, when I hit play, instead of him being too high up, he will hit the ground, like he should. But he's... if he's smaller, you just mess with the pixels per unit. And if you need to change the character controller size, you do that through the radius and the height. Anyways. Sorry. What did you do? Okay, I'm gonna come see.
Can I see your input? Yeah, a lot of these sprites, like, yeah, like it.
You have his.
And you might want to achieve but if in game, yeah, so why is it why? It's just you. Oh, that's fine. The feet are at the right point. That's what's important. No, I mean like in regards to the character controller. Right. Okay. Feel good? Yeah.
Okay, so give me 1 second while I. Yep, direction, speed. Yep. So, on the character, the player character, we're gonna add another new component called Animator. There we go. And in our assets folder, we're going to make a new folder called animations. And in the animations folder, right click and create an animator controller and name it player. We go here? Okay, on the player, you can see the animator component here. Take the animator controller we just made and drop it into where it says controller. It says runtime animator controller. Now, double click on your animation controller here. And we want to go up to the top left corner here where it says parameters, and we're going to add 2 new integer parameters. One is going to be called speed, and one is going to be called direction. All right. Now we're going to click on the player, go to window up the top here, scroll down to animation, and click where it says animation. We want to open up an animation window. And that'll give me this. So if I drag this out a bit, you can see where it says to begin animating player, we want to create a new clip. So I'm going to hit create. And you can see up in the top here, it tells me the file path that I'm at. I'm in the template project, assets, animations. That's where I want to be. So I'm going to call this new animation left idle. And then thumbs up once we're here. I'm going to go to where it says left idle up here. I'm going to click create new clip. I'm going to call this one right idle. It won't be a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. And then I'm going to make one called front idle and back idle. Now, as you can, if I drag this to dock it up the top here, and I click on the animator again, you can see that our 4 new animations have been placed in the animator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the one that says any state, put it in the middle, and drag these ones just around it. Hi, Aiden. We're going through Unity's Animator component at the moment. Objectively, the most painful component to use. We all good? Yeah, those lads. Don't worry about them. So where it says any state here, we're going to do a couple of things. Right-click any state and say make transition and drag it to left idle and click on left idle. And then do that 3 more times to make transitions to the 4 states. And if you click on the arrows between them, you can see our different, oh yeah, ignore the warnings for now. We'll get there in a sec. You can see the different settings on each of these transitions. And what we want to do for all 4 of them is click on them, and where it says transition duration, set it to 0, and uncheck where it says can transition to self. Yeah, and so do that for all 4 arrows. Okay, now if you click on an arrow again, you can hide the settings to give yourself a bit more space. You can see there's this section here that says conditions. That's going to relate to our parameters up here that we set before. Now, what we want to do is for each of these, we want to assign a number to the direction. The way you do this when you're sort of remembering numbers that you've assigned to things, you just have your own way of thinking about it. And the way I think of directions is just WASD 0, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna drop that in the stream chat so I can remember it. But to me, that means that when you press the W key, which is the back animation, it is 0. So we're gonna, on conditions here, hit the little plus button, go to, from the drop where it says speed, change it to direction, change greater to equals, and have it as 0. Now, A is left and A is 1. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to hit the arrow to left idle. We're going to change it to direction equals 1. 0 is back. The third one, S, that is the front. So, and that's 2. So click on the arrow to front and do direction equals 2. And then the last one is right. And change it to direction equals 3. So generally in coding, when we have a number, like a thing of numbers like this, we start counting at 0 instead of counting at 1. And I'm not going to explain 0 indexing to you guys because I like you guys. So just keep in mind that's why back, which is the first direction, we have it at 0 instead of 1. You can see actually if I clicked on an NPC and you can see if I change it so that there's no name on the first line, it calls it element 0 instead of element 1, even though there's one line. And I'm just going to put his name back in there. So if I were to play this now, nothing happens, right? Even though I have the code there and I have the scripts that will control this animation working on my player, still nothing is happening. And that is simply because if I click on the player and I go back to animation, I haven't put anything in here, which would really help, wouldn't it? So I am going to grab my sprites folder and I'm going to keep it selected on player. One way we can keep it focusing on the player is just by hitting this little lock up in the inspector in the top right corner. And now even if I do accidentally click on my sprites, it'll still be focused on the player instead of telling me the info for the sprites. And we want to remember to unlock that later. Real quick, I'm going to come around and make sure we're all up to here.
Oh wait, no, sorry. I've got a terrible. I've got too many points. Awesome. Oh, I'm trying to do that. Yes, those are. Yeah, the component is the biggest pain. But it's fine. Sorry, I just can't read from this distance. Sort of lovely find it pretty fully organized. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we've got plenty of time. If we have time at the end, I'll go over particle systems. Those are fun. This shouldn't take too long. Now that we've got the setup. So what we want to do on each of these is we want to basically drag in the sprites. Let me just double check. Can I just do this? I can, I think. I'm just going to be safe. No, it is the same thing. Ignore me. So as you can see, there's the different names for each animation. I'm going to start with left idle, and I'm going to grab my left idle sprite and just drag and drop it into the animation. Yeah, just basically squint really close at the sprites. The idle sprites should be like there's. Let me open this up. Well, yeah, the idle sprites you can see they are the ones on the side here, so you can count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Then I'm gonna do the same for each next animation. I'm gonna drag my right idle sprite into the right idle animation, my front idle sprite into the front animation, and my back idle sprite. I'm gonna pause in a sec. I haven't tested this, so we're gonna find out together if I coded it correctly. Okay, and I forgot to set the duration for all of them to 0, I think. No, that's set. Okay, cool. So you can see now when I'm walking in a certain direction, he does use the relevant sprites. He doesn't have his walking sprites just yet because I haven't put that in. Why does the front one look like that? I was gonna say these are sprites that I reused from an assignment last year, because I was lazy. Also, I have not tested the animation on these sprites, so we're gonna find out together how it looks. Can I see? Let's see this. That's just like, because you're so zoomed out, it's kind of the odd rendering thing. Am I zoomed out? Well, yeah, the camera is back a bit. Oh, yeah. Yeah, don't worry about it just yet. But yeah, it's not like an error or anything. It's just like when you do these rendering sprites and it only has so many pixels, sometimes. Mm. All right, now we're gonna do the painful part. And if you enjoyed dragging those 4 sprites, we're gonna do it 16 more times. I love you guys. What we're gonna do is we're gonna grab the player again, and we're gonna add 4 more animations called. Oh wait, no, I'm in the sprites folder. Open your animations folder back up before you do this. Called left walk. Yeah. Oh no, not in the box down the bottom. Do it through the animation tab, because then that'll automatically throw it into the animator. So click on the player and open the do you have the animation tab up? So click on the animation tab and then click up here. Yeah. So we want left walk, right walk, front walk, and back walk. And if you go into the animator, we want to throw these just next to their relevant idle animations, just for some organization. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through the 4 arrows that we've already added, and we're going to add a new parameter. And that is that we want the speed to be equal to 0. So click on the... Oh, right. Yeah, remember to hit unlock, because otherwise you'll still be on the player. And we're going to do that for all 4 arrows. Yeah, all speed equals 0. And predictably, that is because when you're not walking anywhere, when you're idle, you just want to have a speed that is 0, you know? Yeah, crazy. Now, the next step is to make transitions to all of the walking animations and go through the same process of making it so that the transition duration is 0 and it can't transition to itself. All right, now for each of them, we want to set the direction to the same thing as the corresponding idle. So for example, back idle has a direction of 0. So we want direction equals 0 for back walk. And then we want speed equals 1. So we want speed to equal 1 for all of them. Left, the direction is 1. Yeah. We all here? So now we're going to do the same process. I'm going to start with left walk. Yeah, game development's fun. This is fun. You are having fun right now. I'm gonna once again lock the player into the inspector, and I'm gonna clear all those warnings. I'm gonna grab my sprites, and for left walk, I'm just, first of all, no, that's not right. Just let me remember, I feel like, or whatever. So I'm gonna grab, so for me, the left walking sprites are 1, 2, 3, and 4. For you guys, they'll be the first 4 in the sprite sheet. So I'm gonna grab them and put them in at intervals in the animation. If you want the preview, you just hit the little arrow here. Next to where it says player sprite. I'm gonna put them in at 0.2 of a second. Oh wait, no. Right, Unity has this thing where it splits. Wait, no. It splits it up so like this is 60, you see here? So it's got like 0, 0.2, 0.4, and then 0.6 is equal to 1. So that's how I've split mine up. It's weird like that. Huh? That's over a second. Just gonna Google something. Did I? Yeah, hold on. What did I do? Oh, wait, I still have this set to can transition to self, so that would cause that gliding thing. I thought I also changed it. Oh, okay, and the last part of this is that if I go to left walk, you can see the last frame here. It needs 0.2 of a second to itself, so I'm going to add a double one of that. 1 second. So if I play it now, you can see when I walk to the left, the last frame is only there for like a tiny amount. Yeah, so I'm gonna go to left walk and I'm gonna add that one twice. At 1.20. No, there's usually a setting called samples that is, for some reason, missing. So give me a moment here because this would be helpful right now. Okay. There we go. Okay, if you go into your animation and you see there's 3 dots here, just above the side here. There's like the little lock icon and 3 dots there. Below that, this one, and go to show sample rate. And I'm gonna set the samples for this one to 4. And now that puts it automatically at the intervals that I want. You don't have to do that, it is just an option. Good question. Oh wait. Give me a moment. Oh wait, no, I'd put it in left idle. That would do it. That would break it. Ignore me. Yeah, then you just do it for all of them. Okay, now this should work. Yeah, okay. I'll go through this a second time for the next one. So now I'm gonna do my next four sprites, which is right walk. You can see, so once again, samples is up here in the corner, and I wanted to show the sample rate, and I want to have my samples at 4 because this is a 4-frame animation. So as you can see, this is in right idle again. I need to get better at this. Right walk. Okay. I want 4 samples, and my walking sprites are these ones down here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to drag them in at each interval. And now when I hit play, he's walking. And once again, every animation has to have a transition duration of 0, and it cannot transition to itself. So I'm going to select the player again, lock it, and go on to my next one, which is front walk. And again, I want the samples to be 4. I want to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to do the same process for walking backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see my janky little walking backwards and forward. Give me a moment. Did I put it in front idle? No. Oh, I have speed equals 2 on both of them. Basically, if you get that gliding thing, you know that there's probably an issue with the animation parameters in here, or you would have can transition to self checked. So you just want to make sure. You just want to make sure basically that you have the correct parameters for that certain animation. And the good thing about that is it's very easy to test in game. You'll know instantly if it is right or wrong. And so yeah, now we have a dude. One thing you could do if you wanted to would be to make diagonal animations. You would have to change the code a bit, but personally, I'm happy with just having him like this. And I can go talk to one of my buddies now. Anyways, I'm gonna come around.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. No, I hadn't zoomed out, so there was still a lot of sprites at like 15 seconds in. So that would have done it. And yeah, it is on the recording. It's fine.
Any? Is there? It says 4 people on mine. Anyway. Oh, how about that? Anyways, for the most part, that is everything I wanted to cover. We will, for the last half an hour we have here, I'm just going to go over some fun stuff, which will be adding particle systems. Basically particle systems, how you make things sparkly, sort of. But yeah, everything we've covered in this workshop, at the start we talked about, different roles of game development. So we've done some technical art stuff in making a shader. We've done a lot of game design stuff, especially in putting together these animations and actually working with Unity's component system, and building our own levels is a big part of game design, and we've done that. At the end of this, I'll zip up this finished project and put it in the chat for anyone who wants to play around with the finished version. But as I said at the start of everything, the best way to learn Unity is to just sort of get into it and mess around with it and sort of familiarize yourself with the different things Unity can do. So I would definitely recommend just going through the stream and doing things yourself, because that is really the best way you can learn how to use a program as big as this. So, as I said, we'll touch on some particle system stuff just for fun in the last few minutes here, the last half an hour. Like with everything else, to create it, you right-click in your hierarchy. It's under Effects, and you click on Particle System. And as you can see, we've got a bunch. You closed Unity by adding a particle system? That would also close Unity. As you can see, we have the default settings for the particle system, just throwing a bunch of particles up in the air like that. Like with every other Unity component, there is a bunch of parameters on the side here. Unlike every other Unity component, this has like 50 million of them, and there's a lot of different things you can do with particles. So basically, to make a particle system, you just want to mess around with the stuff we've got over here. I am going to add some gravity. That's too much gravity. I'm going to add a lot of gravity to this one, and I'm going to make the shape emitter just a lot bigger. Space it out. You could make rain with this, yeah. There's different ways of putting rain into a game, because there's also, you know, sort of UI effects and stuff with that people consider, but yeah, we're gonna have a big circle. Throwing some particles, I'm gonna change the start size to something smaller, maybe like 0.3. And I'm gonna make it, you know, slower. I can increase the rate of emission to make it denser. We might do like 50. That's 150. And I might slow, that's way too slow. Slow down the start speed, you know, and you can just sort of keep messing around with these sort of parameters just to really get the particle system that you want in your game. And you notice when you click off it stops playing the preview, and when you click on it in your hierarchy, you can see what it's doing. You can use this to make fireflies. This is what I used to make fireflies in my game. You could change stuff like the color, you know, maybe make it orange. You can change actually the sprite used. No, that's the material. And yeah, as I said, a lot of particle system stuff is just kind of messing around with it, really. It's just sort of teaching yourself how these different things work. So I'm not going to go through this like individually and get everyone to copy me. It's just something that you really do just learn by messing around with it. And now if I were to play, you can see there's all these, I don't know, dust particles around these two. Yeah, they are some dusty fellas. And yeah, that just about does it for this workshop. There's a bunch of other fun stuff you can sort of go through in Unity, and as I said, I will zip up this project and throw it on the Discord for everyone to play around with. Thanks to people who are watching and people who are here. I hope you guys learned something. Awesome. Do I hit the stop streaming button?
I think it's just here, this one. And then you go stop streaming.
There?
There.